We're talking, our lesson this week is about fearing God. And I'll read the text, though. I'm going to say this before. I'm going to welcome the people on the camera that tune in at a later time. And our lesson study is going to go about 45 minutes. And my name's Kevin Rittberger. I just do this class occasionally, okay? I try to follow what's printed in the adult lesson so that I don't come here and start talking about my cat or my dog, okay? So I try to stick to the material, to be fair to the people that have come and look at the quarterly. But I will tell a little story, because it's all right. It's not in here, but I'll look at the questions at the bottom. It's a Monday through Friday thing. Sometimes I say that for the camera, even though you guys know that already. We'll look at the questions. We won't read all the text, because in 45 minutes, there's no way I could read all the text and then have some input from some people in the group. And we do have a microphone, just because sometimes the people that are at home, they can't hear you, but they can hear me. And it'd be nice if they hear you. So let me read the text here. The title is Fear God and Give Glory to Him. Memory text. Here's the patience of the saints. Here are those who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. Revelation 14:12. Do you mind? I'm not going to read this whole thing, but I always like to read Saturdays. Danish author Søren Kierkegaard told a parable about the end time. It went something like this. A fire broke out backstage in a big theater. A clown who had been part of the performance came out to warn the audience. Get out! The place is on fire. The audience thought it was just a big joke. Part of the show. That's all. And just applauded. He repeated the warning. Get out! Get out! Get out! But the more emphatically he warned them, the greater the applause. For Kierkegaard, that was how the world is going to end. That is, to the general applause of wits who believe it's a joke. The end of the world and events leading up to it are, as we know, no joke. The world faces the most serious crisis since the flood. In fact, Peter himself uses the story of the flood as a symbol of the end, warning that just as the world of old perished by water in the end times, quote this from the Bible, the heavens will pass away with a great noise, and the elements will melt with fervent heat. Both the earth and the works that are in it will be burned up. That's from 2 Peter 3:10. Having been warned about what is coming, we now need to be prepared for it as well. Let me read that again. Having been warned about what is coming, we now need to be prepared for it as well. I'm not going to read this whole lesson. We've got 45 minutes, but I did need to read that. Going into Sunday, then, it's how to be prepared. And that's where the title of the lesson, Fear God and Give Glory to Him, that's where we talk about it. Let me just read it right here in Sunday's lesson. The Greek New Testament word for fear in Revelation 14:7 is phobio. It is used here not in the sense of being afraid of God, but in the sense of reverence, awe, and respect. It conveys the thought of absolute loyalty to God and full surrender to His will. So it is used here not in the sense of being afraid of God, but in the sense of reverence, awe, and respect. I will touch on, what the whole lesson is about. What is it to fear God? And I just got done saying that's not being afraid, but it's reverence, awe, and respect. So I don't sound scatterbrained here. Parts of this lesson, at the very end, I think it's Friday's lesson, they talk about, well, when do you just fall into the abyss of legalism? And that being, I'm going to respect God, or I'm going to show reverence to God just because I have to. Okay? Now, that's my best definition for legalism. I'm sure I'm looking at the group of people in this room, and I think you all know what that is. Anyway, that was my definition quick. But that was in Friday's lesson, because as we studied some of these points, one of them, I don't know if it's Monday or Tuesday, it's about your body is a temple of God. You know, what would he do about yourself, your body, the things, your actions to fear God with yourself? That was one. So anyway, at the very end, yeah, Friday they talked about, well, so you do all this stuff. You do it just because you have to. Because you're not going to go to heaven unless you do it. So I'm going to tell a little story here. This is a quick one. But it's about respect, okay? And in today's world, when somebody talks about legalism, you'll get it. You know, my story okay. I'll tell my story and then you tell me if it's legalism. Okay? Here's a story. All right. 1979. Don't know where you guys are at, but I'm looking at you. You're all somewhere. Just looking through the group. You were all somewhere in 1979. You were here. I was 9 years old. My grandfather was 79, no, he was 69 going on 70, okay? And he had an older sister that was 10 years older than him, so she was pushing 80. And the way the houses were set, this was a homestead, a farm, and it turned out that his sister lived in the old house that was her mom and dad's. And my grandfather, being the youngest, always stayed on the farm with his mom and dad, and they passed away in the 50s. It just turned out that the older sister came back to live in that house. There were two houses right next to it. Her husband had died earlier. She had 3 kids, and they all had successful careers out in Wyoming. She lived in that house. She was, again, going on 80. And turned out they had a call from Arizona that their mom's sister was getting to the point that she wasn't taking care of herself. Okay? So the mom's sister was one of those type of things where, as siblings, y'all have that aunt that is close to your age, that kind of thing. One of those families where my grandpa's, let's just say, he's 70, his sister's 80, and their aunt is like 90. She's the youngest. So you understand, you got all these kids, and their mom's sister is like almost their age. Okay? Well, years have gone by. She'd been married twice, and her husband had died. She lived in Kingman, Arizona. You need to come. Neighbors called up. Yeah, she's getting to the point you need to come. So she never had any kids. None. No kids. So he said, well, we're going to go down and we'll have to move her back up here. And so he took his sister with him. He's 70, she's 80. They go to Kingman, Arizona. He comes back. I had never met, it'd be my great-great Aunt Martha. Okay? She moved in with her niece, which is Aunt Claire to me. So you have Claire's 80, her aunt's 90. They're living in this little farmhouse next to my grandpa. He come back and he tells this story to me. He said, yeah, we got down there and said it's 3 days. And it was time to pack. And he said, your Aunt Claire was helping put stuff in. She's going to move. She's moving from Arizona, South Dakota. And they packed. And they sorted for 2.5 days. And he said on the second day, this almost sounds biblical. He said the third day, he said, on the third day, anybody that wants to leave for South Dakota better be in the car. Okay? And he said the boxes went like this. And he said away it went. Everything was getting done. And so he said on the third day, he come home. And it was always such an amazing story to me because my grandfather never really went anywhere. And I was always like, you went to the place called Arizona. I was 9 years old. You brought back somebody who's related to me? Yeah? All right. Well, a few months go by, and he said, yeah, he never talked in front of the kids. You understand? You never got gossip in front of my grandfather. He's one of those kind of adults. Kids don't need to hear stuff. You know, he's an upstanding guy. But he said this one time, he just said, yeah, he said, yeah, this living arrangement might be a little hard. And he said, what do you mean? Well, Martha's in with Aunt Claire. And I go, and he said that to my grandmother, and my little ears, I was 9-year-old ears, I go, what's hard? There's that house has lots of room. He goes, well, you live by yourself. They both live by themselves. Now they're roomies. He says, yeah, you get to fighting. And I asked him, I said, what could you fight about? I was 9 years old. And I asked my grandfather, I said, what could you possibly fight about? And he said, well, one likes Folgers coffee, and the other one likes Folgers crystals. That's enough to fight about. That was just a joke. It doesn't matter what it is. You got a roommate. Yeah, but that's what he said to me. And I was 9 years old, and I got thinking about that. Yeah, all right. Yeah. He says, that's enough. Split that house up. So he was a man of few words. But was he right? I mean, from the group here, I don't know how many of you guys have been married before that, going to college. You have roommates. There's some make or break, isn't there? Sounds like it. All right, what does this have to do with this lesson? Was it legalism that he had to go down and pick up his aunt and bring her back to the state of South Dakota? Now, I thought about that. No. Just because a neighbor called up, was there any law in the land that says that you need to care for your mother's sister? I got to think about it. No, there's not. No, none of it. And so he could have told that neighbor, not my problem. So my grandfather and his sister went down to get her and bring her back. And I thought, did they do it because she was a lot of fun when they were younger? I don't know. I mean, again, my grandfather's 70, his sister's 80, she's 90. I don't know what we call bridges or creeks they crossed in their lifetime. I don't know. But away they went, come back. Did my grandfather know the situation and the living? Did he know it was going to be a challenge? Well, I think he knew before he went. There was challenges. There was other brothers and sisters, but they were all married. One was in Spearfish, one was up at Newell. You're seeing there was other families, but it just turned out that there was only one that had a house to herself. It just made sense. Well, can she move in with you? Anyway, today when at the Friday's lesson, they talk about legalism. Do you respect God because he's going to get you or hurt you? What does it mean to respect God? Well, I'll tell you this story. Was it legalism that my grandfather went down to Kingman, Arizona and brought his aunt back? I only get one nod here, so I'm going to be, but you see that I'm giving you as much material here as I can. Why did he do it? Okay, so just so I don't give you the microphone here, I'm going to talk. I'm hearing love and respect, and I heard a repeat, love and respect. Love and family. What else? Obligation. But see, the thing is I hear love and respect, and then I kind of come over here, and I hear obligation, and all of a sudden somebody hears the word legalism, but yet I'm really kind of here. Even though I'm here, but I don't. Maybe I'm in the middle here. But what else he said? Okay. Okay. What was said is that in this situation he was obligated the way he felt that he did what he did, whereas God is, he created us and we have redemption through him, which is different. So my story is not exact, I know. And so when you said obligation, that's my grandfather doing his family duties, responsibility. Okay, which I know is different than respecting God. I know it's different, but yes, he created love. But what I want to, there is that underlying sentiment of respect that, you know how everybody says that the world's changing, that people don't know respect, and young kids don't acknowledge. And the thing is, I grew up in a world that, I've seen that, you used the word obligation, but I did hear the word respect. The thing is there's respect out there. And I grew up seeing respect that I don't see today, and the lesson did mention that. Talk. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I just think that word
Duty.
I think it reflects the same thing. It's the obligations, the duty, but perhaps without the negative connotation. So more of a duty, and there's an honor to that duty, and a love that all comes in without necessarily the burden of obligation, but duty.
Duty. Yes. Okay. So I hope you heard. He's talking about there's going to be a burden to the obligation, but along with it comes honor, and it makes you feel good. Now the Bible goes on and talks about respect and obligation, and Paul talks about you're supposed to do it with a happy heart. I'm pretty sure he said that there's just duty and obligation and duty and honor and such, but you're not supposed to go around with begrudging. And so the thing is that's further talk about this stuff. But this is kind of like the chicken and the egg. What comes first? Sometimes there's obligation and duty, and maybe you can find some love in it. But again, what I said before is that when we talk about this word legalism, we're going to talk a little bit here about fearing God and health and such like that. I'm the last person to get up in front and tell you where you live. I'm not going to do that. But if I was going to sit there and tell sometimes you just got to do stuff. And I know that sounds legalistic, but my grandfather called it obligation or duty or whatever. He just went and did it. And that's what you do. And he knew that there was going to be challenges when he put the two together, my Aunt Clara and her name was Martha. He knew there was going to be challenges, and he took it. Pretty soon, he took care of her affairs. Within a couple years, she moved into a VA because her husband was in a VA. So he wasn't accepting the total burden, but he was in charge. And to represent kind of duty and honor, I'll continue. 20 years later, after she passed away, he got this $700 note from a New York Life or something like that in the mail. And it turned out that it was a nickel and dime insurance policy after she died. And it turned out that, it was in the paper. You know, you ever look in that lost stuff in the paper, unclaimed property? And it turned her name, and he went up to the courthouse and gave Social Security number. Turned out it was a $700 New York Life. And he come home and he told this, back to duty and honor, which he talked about. He said this to me. He said, yeah. He said, you got this policy, and it looks like she took it out when she was living here. And he said, I thought I ran them all off. He said, but somebody got through. That's what he said. I ran them all off. But somebody got through. And what he did with that is that he had some brothers and most of his brothers and sisters alive except one month. He divided that like $172. And he said $172 to a sister, and then $172 to a brother, and he set that money out because he wasn't going to accept it. Everybody, you understand what he did is that it wasn't his. Every family got some of it. Anyway, but back to this wreck. In Friday's lesson, they talk about legalism, and I do want to just say this morning, the chicken and egg thing. At some point, you're just going to have duty and honor, and it's not going to be fun. You just do the right thing. You mentioned it there. I can't explain it. You just see it happen. You just see it happen. And sometimes the people that do that they just know it's the right thing is the best way to describe it. And so back to fearing God. Before we get into, we'll talk about this now because we're running right through it. We can always come back and talk about points that I'm missing in this lesson. Do you believe that God created your body and He owns you? That's part of this. And in the lesson it's talking about, if you know not that He owns you, but He created everything. The question of the lesson is how do you fear God if you recognize that point? And I think everybody in this room knows that he just does. It's not a control thing. I don't think it's a control thing at all. But he does. And I guess I've always accepted that. And so I'm the last one up here to tell you how to live a life with regards to your body, your health, so that you show you fear God. Oh, that's such a touchy subject. Okay? But I was talking to somebody about something, and they don't go to this church. They go to a different church, and they go regularly. Not this church, different church. But he mentioned that. It was a he. He said, "No, well, there's in the Bible they say that your body's the temple of God." How do people know that? People who don't go to Sunday Adventist church. People just, yeah. What does it mean? It means something different to each person. Here's one, is that people recognize that, this is on the surface. If you recognize that God made you, are you the one, should you tempt fate? Suicide's a bad thing. Should you ever get to the point that you want to, I know I'm saying this rough or whatever, kill yourself? Don't you owe it to God to take care of yourself? I'll tell you a quick story here. This is a quick one. Real new neighbor. He was an alcoholic. Terrible alcoholic. Great guy. Wanted to help everybody. He was just wired that way. Complications in health and everything, probably because of his drinking. It's been 10 years ago. He might have been in his 50s. Had 3 girls, 1 boy. And his health complications took him to the hospital, and it looked like the end was going to be near. And he told somebody, the doctor said, you might be able to turn this around. It's the drinking. And he said to one of his friends, and I think he'd say it. This is one of those hearsay things, but I think he would have said it. He said, if I got to live in a world where I can't drink, he said, I don't want to live it. So, now this is not me coming here this morning and talking about church, church and you shouldn't drink or smoke or anything. But I wonder if somebody told me, hey Kibben, you need to cut down on that butter. If you want to be around to see grandkids, what do you do? Don't you, if you don't owe it to God, wouldn't you owe it to your friends and your family? So I think that statement that if I can't live in this world, and he was a nice guy. He wasn't selfish. He helped a lot of people. This is a true story. He was a great guy. But he believed that, and he died. So anyway, your thoughts. Do you owe it for the people to be around you? You just owe it to God that you need to, motor through this life with some respectful, try to make it to, the end? Sure. To be aware of your health and aware of your choices so that you can function like you said, like you're supposed to be designed. That you learn stuff. You might learn something from your neighbor. I'm not going to be the one up front here. I'm not going to be the teacher. I learned stuff, okay? And I was at a class. No, it wasn't a class. There's a gentleman here who's a firefighter, okay? I went to this thing. It's fire department meeting, okay? And there was a gentleman that attended the class. So I didn't attend the class, but he had to say what he learned. It was called Fire Symposium, okay? And it was held here in Rapid City. So he went, and during the day they have different workshops or where. And he brought up, he said, there was somebody, it was health. He said the people that are called first responders that engage in, fire department work or even highway patrolmen or whatever, he was saying that there's certain health-related issues. And one of them is, if not in my area, but if you're around a lot of tragic stuff, you can suffer from stress when you go home. My world, we have grass fires, okay, out on the prairie. I don't live in that world, but it's aware. And then it was also brought up that your health is that some people, you're getting older or whatever. In my area, volunteer fire department, you can have 70-year-old people helping out, but they can go out and work hard and strenuous, and in their heart, they're living on adrenaline, and they come back to the fire hall, and that adrenaline disappears, and they said, be aware of that. So this is awareness thing, okay? But the one thing I wanted to say he brought up that was pretty good is that some people, say younger people or older, younger, they function on, they like adrenaline. And that was part of the subject, is that maybe sometimes when you're wired that way and you feed on that, there is a lot of drinking too. You know, maybe not on the job or whatever. But they're talking about people, good people getting the job done, and they're talking about their health and the way people are wired. And you look at this, the reason it's being brought up is that somewhere in there, you got to get your job done, you got to go home to your family, and you got to function. 30 years ago, you might have told somebody, I don't do this. And that might have been the only discussion in the room, and somebody would say, well, I do it, Kevin. And I agree, you know, but what I'm saying is it was harder 30 years ago because maybe everybody's like, yeah, we do this. So you go to church and eat nuts. But I'll tell you what, it's gotten real easy now. Maybe because I'm older or whatever. But around in this world, in this country now, anything goes. So the thing is, so where's that leave me up front? I'm going to tell you, I'm going to have to tell people eventually, man, I don't roll that way. So you can have a nice discussion. You can say something pleasant. And the thing is I don't know if you're going to make anybody mad anymore because anything goes. But I don't think it's wrong I don't think it's wrong now. I don't think you're going to hurt anybody's feelings. I don't know if I do that. So, and the reason why I would say that is because you would say, you know, well, boy, if you do that, then you're going to have to do more of that and more of that. You know, there's never an end to it sometimes. And okay, I'm going to go with Roy right here, and then I think you had something, right? Roy here, and then.
I listened to this in the testimony, and your talk about knowing somebody was a really nice guy,
Yep.
but did himself in.
Yep. Alcoholism. Yep.
We know that most people come to Christ in their teenage years. And I think as we do mature, I worked intensive care for 44 years because of the adrenaline. Now, I didn't do it for the excitement. I did it because I had the skills to do that. And it kept me going. Military, of the Vietnam era, I had, and I worked in the VA my last few years in medicine. There are people who did not just the 1 year required of them, but 4 and 6 years because of the adrenaline. To this day, people who come back from a combat zone, that's part of the problem. They were living on adrenaline, you know, hyper acute, you know, aware of what's going on around them. Then they come back here and, you know, somebody cuts them off at a stoplight or something, you know, and their response is that adrenaline. And so, you know, the military has programs to try to help people with that. But only when we, as Janet's perfect example, this isn't the way I want to live, you know, and somebody has to let them know about Christ. And there is a love there, and we want to experience that peace that love brings. So it's just as you were just now talking, you know, a lot of people just don't even drift that way anymore about thinking about Christ and love. You know, they need to somehow be prompted to look in that direction.
We've got to come down to they need to find a balance. That's the catchwords used today. Was there? Now, I hope you know when I told, and I hope everybody heard, when I told the story about this gentleman that being a real nice guy, and I hope you know that I didn't. That guy did a lot of good stuff. He did it because he wanted to help people and everything. And so I hope you know when we talk about these things is that sometimes it's such an easy mark, to bring that up because you're so aware of that situation. But the thing is next person, you don't know what they're dealing with. But I just wanted to say is that it's one of those things that I've come to understand. There's a lot of nice people that drink. They are, and they're dealing with something that they're just over time they're going to get on top. But at the same time, maybe I'm dealing with something else, something else. So I hope when we talk about this, and it's on that camera, I hope that I don't go to the usuals. Well, let's talk about addiction. I hope I'm not doing that up front here. And so when I talk about these things, it's not a thermometer to measure where somebody's at, whether or not they know God. I hope you know that, because I'm the last person. I told you before, it's people have come in here. I'm the last person to stand up right in front here and say, if you make, with regards to your health, you do this, this, and this, and stay away from this. I'm not going to do that. Everybody's going to have to decide on their own. But the comments being made are good or whatever. I hope you know that I wasn't picking on anybody, okay? I hope you know, because this lesson's going to end in 3 minutes. Because this is, the point of the lesson is temple of God. How you see that verse, how do you fear God with respect to that? And what was brought up in here is that some things were said, well, sometimes you just want to make changes because you feel impressed. All right, guys, I'm going to end with a short prayer. Hey, just asking Rick, I do stop at 10:45, or was it 10:40? I'm sorry. All right, we'll say a prayer. Dear Jesus, thank you for our lesson today, and thanks for all the people that joined in. Amen. I'm sorry.